Agent Romanoff. You miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Captain, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey everyone.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Film Artsy, your number one source for all things films and movies. My name is Eli, and today we are doing our review on Ant-Man and the Wasp. This will be a non-spoiler review, so you don't have to worry about having any details from the film being spoiled in this review. That being said, did this movie live up to the hype that the MCU has built up to this point? Does it live up to the first Ant-Man? Let's talk about that. So the first thing that you'll notice in this film is that there is definitely a time jump, just like with every Marvel movie more or less. This one is much bigger than other sequels we've had. This one takes place approximately 2 years after the event of Captain America Civil War. We see this in the trailer, it's really nothing new, but Scott Lang is put under house arrest, and that's pretty much as far as we're going to get into this movie without going into spoiler territory. But overall, this film stays pretty close thematically to the storytelling techniques that we had in the very first Ant-Man movie, and really digs into fleshing out the characters involved much more, which was really appreciated, or at least fleshing out the main characters much more. We didn't see too much of any secondary characters getting too much more background than what we got in the first film. We get to see more of Scott's character coming through, and we get to see some of the themes we saw in the first film kind of reiterated and doubled down here. We get to see Hope's character a lot more fleshed out than in the first film. She's much more three-dimensional, and I wish they would have gone just a little bit further with Hope's development, but for the most part, it's pretty good. It's steps in the right direction from the first one. They did a good job with Hank's character, too. They definitely could have had this character be irrelevant in the story, but they did a good job at making him a prominent character in this story arc as well as in the first Ant-Man movie. With that, we also see the introduction of Ghost, who is fairly one-dimensional throughout most of the movie. Most of the interesting stuff comes in the third act, but we don't really see too much more than like the one-dimensional premise that we get from this character. On the other hand, surprisingly enough, Bill Foster, played by Lawrence Fishburne, actually had a more in-depth character, and that was really interesting to see. But wiring it down and going down to the general bones of this movie, the bare bone structure of this film, it's actually really good. The storytelling is really well paced, there's never any confusion as to why things are going on, and it's really fun. There's really great balances of the comedic moments, which are so important and integral to Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp here, and also the action sequences that people love from the MCU movies. The only weird thing that I noticed from the storytelling here is that the stakes are kind of vague. We have the sense of urgency, and they reiterate why things are going the way they are, why it's important, why it's all or nothing like in any other superhero movie, but at the same time, it just feels a little bit ambiguous too. We don't really know a lot of detail as to some of the deeper intricacies of the science behind this film, and it kind of makes some of the story a little bit harder to follow, but at least the movie makes effort into kind of translating the scientific terms into a more understandable and easier to consume story. But there's definitely a lot of techno babble which could maybe get you a little bit confused. Fortunately, Paul Rudd's performance is absolutely on point. The writing was great. Paul Rudd came on as a co-writer and did an excellent job at kind of playing the role of the audience, relating back to the audience and kind of not understanding some of these larger scientific terms so the audience can understand it. And since this film is so layered in comedy, even if something is confusing you, you often can get distracted by some of the hilarious scenes and sequences that are in this movie. Seriously, I would say if you liked the comedy in the first one, this one takes pretty much any scene that was great in the first one and just kind of more or less outdoes it. I can pretty much think of the top scenes from the first Ant-Man and compare them to different scenes in this film and see how this movie just did it better. They really do a good job at not putting all of the funny moments in the very beginning of the movie, which a lot of comedy movies kind of do, and then take a much darker turn. They really pace out the comedy so that there's some really funny and fulfilling moments in the second and third act, and not just kind of top loaded into the front. Michael Pena returns as Luis, which was one of the characters we really wanted to see more development and more screen time from, and to an extent they do a good job. They definitely keep him in the forefront of the film and keep him as this comedic character, but at the same time they really didn't dig into his character and give him any more depth than we had in the first film. He's funny, his jokes are great, and his character is just pretty much identical to the first film. He hasn't really gone anywhere or developed any more from where he was originally. Actually, if anything, Abby Fortson, who plays Scott's daughter, has more character development than a lot of the characters in this movie. And while I'm kind of criticizing some of the character development in this film, overall the film is just really fun, and I can't really dig at it too much because it's definitely more of the comedy action genre compared to some of the other films we've had in the MCU. This movie isn't trying to be a Iron Man or a Captain America movie where there's comedic quips, but it's mostly action and story driven. This one is definitely much more a comedic story, and that is great, and it's doing a good job here. There was kind of this moment about halfway through the film where I was just thinking, man, this is fun. This is just a really well thought out and fun movie, and that's really good. The movie doesn't take itself too seriously, and honestly, as a MCU movie coming in the aftermath of Avengers Infinity War, it definitely is much more lighthearted and easier to sit down and watch and just enjoy, especially after what happened a couple months ago. While I did enjoy the humor and the comedy, and even a lot of the storytelling that was put in here, I do wish the film went more places, setting-wise. For the most part, majority of the film takes place in San Francisco, on the streets, surprisingly. And the huge action sequence that takes place in the third act is kind of repetitive to an extent. It just felt like it was going on a little bit longer than maybe that it had to, but at least by the time we do get to the final finale, it definitely is a unique type of conclusion, at least, or at least more unique than what we were seeing before in the movie. But more than anything, the comedic quips were so absolutely fantastic, and we can't reiterate that enough. Some of the jokes and scenes in this film were just hilarious, and there's so much situational humor in this movie that definitely warrants for a watch. Even the unfunny characters had their moments of funny scenes, and then of course the great comedic characters like Scott and Luis have some really funny and clever scenes that work really well here. The ending of the film definitely will feel a little bit rushed. However, make sure you stay for the after credits scene, because there is an amazing after credits scene that's probably going to rank in some of the top best after credit scenes we've seen in any Marvel movie so far, definitely in the top 5 or so. So even if you didn't like the actual ending to the movie, there's a really high chance that this new ending in the after credits scene might make you feel a little bit better, and it definitely makes you think about the broader scope of the MCU, and that is something that's definitely key in this film. If you follow the MCU overall, you're going to realize that there is a lot of opportunities and possibilities in this film and how it's going to affect the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is really interesting. And at the same time, while we're learning all of this information and these scientific tools that they have, the film does a great job at keeping the story self-contained. It's not like a Spider-Man movie where you're going to see a Captain America cameo or a Iron Man appearance. This movie is completely self-contained. It is just the characters in the world of Ant-Man, and that's great. There's references to the Sokovia Accords, and there's references to Captain America, but the movie itself is for its characters, and we really get to learn a lot about what else exists in the MCU with learning a little bit more about the quantum realm. And overall, we really liked that idea. As a viewer, we now have the ability to theorize what's going to happen in the future, and what we know with now from this movie, how it relates to the other MCU movies. And that's definitely a key that gives this movie a couple extra points, because at this point the MCU is a movie series where each movie kind of builds on each other even if they're unrelated. And this movie does a great job at keeping itself self-contained and unrelated while also completely existing within the MCU. And that's something that was really well done. Overall, we loved this movie, even with some of the storytelling criticisms that we brought up in the character development. This movie definitely deserves a watch like any other MCU movie. If you're a huge MCU fan, you're gonna love this movie. You're not gonna go home disappointed. And even if you're more of a casual watcher, it's a funny movie, and there's a lot of good story in there, and there's a lot of good heart in there. So this movie definitely gets our seal of approval, and it's a movie you're gonna want to watch in theaters. Don't wait to watch it on Netflix or DVD or anything like that. Definitely see this movie in theaters because it's really fun. That being said, that's our review for this movie. If you enjoyed the movie or you enjoyed the review, make sure you hit the like button down below. If you want to see and hear our spoiler discussion on this movie, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because next week we have a ton of Ant-Man and the Wasp commentary and more videos coming out where we're gonna go over all the spoilers and all of our theories on how it connects everything to the universe, along with some really cool things that we really wanted to talk about. So make sure you're subscribed, get your notifications on, and we'll talk about that soon. We'll see you guys next time with a brand new upload.
Hey, it's Gigi Hadid. For more videos like this, click here.
Hi, I'm Cara Delevingne. Please don't forget to subscribe by clicking this button right here. Boop.
Thanks for watching.